You accidentally left your cocaine at the White House. What do you do now? Start a full-blown investigation into whose cocaine this might be. Wipes nose. Don't bring it up to anyone. Pretend it never happened. Head to the Winchester, grab a pint, and wait for this whole thing to blow over. Ask Reddit what they would do. Wonder why the hell I was at the White House? Nice try, FBI. You move on, man, because it's gone now, just gone. Someone out there has the greatest I did cocaine at the White House story ever. I did not have sexual nasal relations with that woman powder. Ask for it back. Clearly no repercussions are going to happen at this point, so might as well. If poor people fantasize about winning the lottery, then what do rich people fantasize about? More time. I know a guy who worked for Barbra Streisand and apparently she was upset that her Picasso, an original, wasn't as nice as someone else's. Grass is always greener, I guess. I once had a chance to spend a few moments in idle conversation with a multimillionaire, and he told me that having money just takes the mask off of the problems that most people argue about when they think they're arguing about money. Based on that, I'd guess many of them daydream about simpler times. I have a friend who is really rich, like money is not an issue rich. I asked him one day, jokingly, "LOL mate, what do you want for your birthday? We are legit giving up buying you anything." He said, "Nothing mate, just come over to my birthday party and I will be really happy." So I guess, friends and connection. Living forever. Betting $1 on switching the lives of two people on opposite sides of the social hierarchy and observing the results of nature versus nurture in the development of a person. Real friends. Seeing the Titanic. People are saying joke answers and that's cool, but I think that something that rich people become fixated on is being admired. You've got food, shelter. You've got resources for you and your children. You've got vacations and toys and options. But what do people think about when they hear your name? That's what makes Bill Gates launched the Gates Foundation. That's why they donate huge sums and get their names on buildings. That's why Andrew Carnegie built the public buildings he did later in his life. That's why they join non-profit boards and host fundraisers. That's literally why Alfred Nobel started the Nobel Peace Prize. It worked. His name is far more associated with peace than with his most popular invention, dynamite. Rich people want to be admired. Or maybe all people want to be admired, but rich people can afford to focus on it, because they have food and homes and time. The way that some poor schmuck fantasizes about hitting the Powerball. Some rich schmuck fantasizes about being remembered as something better than a schmuck. Remember that weird-ass video that Mark Zuckerberg did of him grilling stuff? I imagine they fantasize about being a hard-working middle-class person doing regular stuff just to get by. Having nobody trying to get their money. I can't speak as someone who is rich because I'm not, but my ex was a multimillionaire. We came from wildly different economic backgrounds. I grew up poor, in a low-income neighborhood. She grew up in an upper-middle-class neighborhood. She received an inheritance early in our relationship, and to keep things short, let's just say she never has to work a day in her life again. Family-wise, we both grew up and experienced adversity. We were both raised in dysfunctional households. The major difference was how we dealt with high-stress situations. I've always been quick on my feet and learned at an early age how to work around adversity despite sometimes it being unhealthy. I learned, at a young age, that I had to deal with my problems and find solutions in order to move forward with life and enjoy what I had. I think her experiences, which are totally valid, were difficult, but I don't think she ever knew how to provide for herself, how to soothe or heal and move forward because of the safety nets available to her. It gravely affected her and was ultimately why we broke up. We had fundamentally different views on life and how to solve problems. I always think back to when we shared our life experiences and we related on a lot of things, but she was angry at me for going through worse things and not developing BPD, which she suffered from. I loved her and I hope someday she learns to love herself, forgive herself, and learn that life doesn't always have to be a cruel experience. You gotta take life as it comes at you and make the best of it, despite the pain. There is joy in life. Having the most money. Which musicians are revered but are actually horrible people? Chuck Berry assaulted multiple women, some of which he pleaded guilty for, was found with CP in his possession at a raid on his home, spied on women in restrooms and a fuck ton of really messed up shit. Chuck Berry used to hide cameras into women's toilets. My grandpa went to school with one of Bing Crosby's sons, and apparently Bing was a massively abusive shit. I don't remember every detail, and I'm sure you can read up on it on Gary Crosby's book Going My Own Way, but there was a lot of rants during holidays where my grandpa would talk about how Bing would lock his sons up in their room and not feed them for days and other horrendous shit like that. Not entirely sure on the complete validity of the details of his claims, but the book is there and should provide more information on what it was like to be Bing Crosby's son. Most of them. Mick Jagger had sex with 15-year-olds when he was in his 30s. Don Henley did. And one of them died in his pool. He got probation. And so on. My dad used to work for Virgin Records in London in the 1970s. He met lots of popular musicians of the time and said that almost every single of them, with the exception of the reggae artists, was selfish, entitled and unbearable to be around. But he held a special dislike for Iggy Pop, despite loving his music. He told me there was a boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old, who used to hang around in Virgin Records and loved Iggy Pop. One day Iggy came in to sign records for fans. The kid approached my dad. He was upset because he couldn't afford to buy a record. So my dad gave him one of the posters off the wall promoting the event and said, "It's okay, you can get him to sign this." The kid queued up, and when he got the front with a free poster instead of an album, Iggy erupted. He took the poster, scrunched it up, put it down his trousers and rubbed it against his backside before throwing the ball of paper back in the kid's face. I can't imagine how that child must have felt. Dre. Why, when this question gets asked, does no one ever say Dr. Dre? Dude is a fucking monster that makes Chris Brown look like an angel. Michelle Lee met Dr. Dre, whose real name is Andre Ramel Young, at 16 years old when doing a vocal part for a group known as the World Class Wreckin' Crew. The song was titled as Turn Off the Lights and was released in 1987. It later peaked at number 54 on the Billboard charts. 16-17. They began dating a few months after meeting one another. Michelle Lee was 16 and later turned 17 in December, and Dre, who had a baby on the way from a previous relationship, was 22. 18. The couple later became engaged and had their son, Marcel, in February 1991. Marcel was Michelle Lee's first child and Dr. Dre's sixth. 19. After their son was born, their relationship became more strained due to Dr. Dre's drinking, infidelity, and volatile behavior. Michelle Lee has stated that Dre was physically abusive throughout their relationship. Her injuries included a broken nose, which she had to have surgically corrected, a cracked rib and 5 black eyes. 16-20. She recalled on The Breakfast Club 21 after one argument Dre shot at Michelle Lee, missing her by inches. She left the bullet in the door for him to see and said, "He never tried to shoot me anymore. Thank God. But the beatings were right, was a lot his last wife, I just couldn't do it anymore. It's too much." 22. She then began to self-medicate with prescription pills and alcohol. 7. Michelle Lee left Dre after she discovered that he was engaged to another woman. 7. On January 27, 1991, Dr. Dre encountered Barnes at a record release party in Hollywood. According to Barnes, he picked her up by her hair and began slamming her head and the right side of her body repeatedly against a brick wall near the stairway as his bodyguard held off the crowd with a gun. After Dr. Dre tried to throw her down the stairs and failed, he began kicking her in the ribs and hands. She escaped and ran into the women's restroom. Dr. Dre followed her and grabbed her from behind by the hair again and proceeded to punch her in the back of the head. Finally, Dre and his bodyguard ran from the building. 6. NWA promoter Doug Young claims that he attempted to intervene to restrain Dr. Dre, but that he was punched in the mouth by Dr. Dre's bodyguard. 7. 5 months after filing for divorce, Nicole, 51, alleges that Dre, and Andre Young, held a gun to my head twice in 2000 and 2001, that he punched me in the head/face in 1999 and 200, and that he kicked down a door while she hid from his rage in 2016, among other instances of abuse. Andre has verbally and emotionally decimated my personhood to the extent that I currently suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome, she said in the documents, filed to the Superior Court of California. Don't act like you forgot about Dre. Dude has been beating women for decades. Ian Watkins. I can never listen to Lost Prophets again thanks to that disgusting filthy lowlife of a man. Diane Tward are horrible human beings. Yvonne Moody, lead singer of Five Finger Death Punch. He has a repeated history of violence towards women, including girlfriends, his sister, and mom. Chris Brown's songs still get hundreds of millions of views. Jennifer Lopez. She's a despicable human being that treats service workers like garbage. It's also come to light that she hasn't even sung a great deal of her songs herself. And that which she has sung is not great. John Phillips from the Mamas and Papas. Jared Leto. I know someone who was in close quarters with Jack White and he was a dick to her the whole time. I also have friends who played a Morrissey show. If you make eye contact with him, he will apparently drop out of the lineup. Mind you, this was a stadium gig. On the other hand, Debbie Harry from Blondie was a sweetheart. She baked cookies for the band and treated them like family. They've only ever had nice things to say about her. Asterisk edited to correctly refer to Debbie Harry by her name instead of her band's name. Steve Miller. The Black Keys were tasked with introducing him into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame some years ago, and they said he was such a miserable asshole the entire time. They left the ceremony as soon as he went on stage to perform.